bringing Pietre Dure to the north, one of the vehicles was a Byzantine princess. Her name was Theophanu, and she married in 970 Emperor Otto II, and she brought from Byzance with her a lot of carved stones, a lot of reliquaries which were preserved in carved stones. And please keep in mind, in the exhibition, we take hardstones, Pietre Dure, very literally. It's not only applied to tables and to mosaics, but it's also applied to vessels and other artistic objects that are fashioned out of this valuable material. Here, this is again in Aachen, and you see the ambo, or it's a kind of pulpit of Emperor Henry II, which was installed shortly after the year 1000. Again, remember, we all were lucky to live through the year 2000 to the change, and it was an enormous nervous period. It was a period that people feared the world would disappear and everything, and everybody tried to please God and to embellish the churches, and this was one of the main signs in Aachen. And you see here is built in different hardstone pieces. Here on the side, a Fatimid, which is an Egyptian rock crystal vessel, but then you have a nephrite bowl here, and you have some other bowls, and on the sides you have ivories, which came from the 6th century from Alexandria. That means, again, that they wanted to take these things to legitimize the rule of the current emperor. On the other side, you see a calyx, which is today in Washington, and it belonged to Abbot Suger of Saint-Denis, one of the most famous figures of the medieval ages. He wrote a lot about the church ceremony, but also about the building of his abbot, and he also said that the pillars that were used and pillars of precious materials were to be compared with the church itself, that they were supported by very strong and very precious pillars, which were the current leaders. But this is interesting because this is a Proto-Main piece 2 centuries before Christ from Egypt, and it was set into this wonderful setting by Abt Suger, and he also left us a legacy when he described the foundation stone, and again something that has to do with stones, the foundation stone ceremony, and I just will read you a very short excerpt. Suger of Saint-Denis near Paris described in a compelling account the cornerstone ceremony held for one part of the church on July the 14th, 1140. And July the 14th today is Bastille Day. Of course, we remember the French Revolution, but please keep in mind that before that date, it was almost a holy feast day, because this was the foundation of the church where the kings of France would be buried, and therefore it was something very special and extremely embellished. Suger will come to the Saint-Denis construction site, an important group of French clerics and King Louis VII, who arrived in a solemn procession accompanied by foremost relics of the cloisters. And now a citation, "The foremost serene king himself stepped down into the excavation and with his own hand let his stone. Also, we and many others, both abbots and monks, laid their stones. Certain persons also deposited gems out of love and reverence for Jesus Christ, chanting, Lapidis preciosis omnis muri tui, which means all the walls are precious stones." And it shows you how important this was in this period. And you see here the church with a piece that was destroyed in the French Revolution, which had a lot of semi-precious stones and antique cameos mounted in it. But stones were also used for portable altars. Since a very early concile, it was a must that an altar had to be made out of a durable material, had to be of stone. But when a priest went on a voyage, he had to take a portable altar, and this was filled with a piece of amethyst. It's Rhenish, early 14th century, and at the time, this stone was regarded as one of the precious stones, like diamonds, rubies, emeralds, and sapphires. Only at the end of the 18th century and the early 19th century, when in the Ural Mountains they found large deposits of amethyst, which had a much intense violet color, the stone became quite common. This is a painting of Anne de Sorel. She was the mistress of King Charles VII of France. She had herself depicted as the Madonna sitting on a throne, which is embellished with sardonyx, with a stone that was preserved and very much used by the high aristocracy. And the stone is incorporated in a piece of furniture. And there was a tradition in France, we know it from inventories, but very little has survived. This is a dressoir from Burgundy, where you have stone inlay here, and this is armoire à deux corps, a cabinet with two parts, where you have marble from a rare quarry, also inlaid in the wooden matrix to embellish it. Farther east, there was Prague, and Prague became in the 14th century the residence of Charles IV, the emperor, and they discovered near Prague, very not far away, a very specific stone. You see it here, and it had large inclusions of amethyst, so it was something very celebrated. And the emperor, who was at the same time king of Bohemia, he ordered that the cathedral up on the Harachin palace would be embellished with these stones, and also his private chapel in Karlstein Castle, where he would live most of the time, and he would walk in almost into a shrine that was covered with this extremely expensive material. After his death, unfortunately, the quarry got forgotten, and around 1600, Rudolf II sent out expeditions to search for it, but they couldn't find it, and it was not rediscovered until the early 19th century. We at the Metropolitan are fortunate to have two pieces made out of this stone. One ewer, which is in the exhibition, and in 2000 we were able to, with the help of Jane Weitzman, to buy these small beaker, which is quite rare because you see even the handle is carved out of the same material of the stone as the handle is carved here on these ewer.